What up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Dan Casper here, as always. Big thanks for tuning in. And, man, we got a few topics we're going to be hitting up on this episode of the podcast. We got our picks coming up. Who are we picking? When I say we, Brandon Berg's going to be joining me here in just a little bit. But we're going to be making our picks for the NFC and AFC championship game. Also, with Brandon, we're going to talk some Brewers, because Brandon's our Brewer guy, so I want to get his thoughts on a couple of moves made this week, most notably, Rhys Hoskins coming over to the Crew. We'll talk some more Bucs with the change in coaching as well with Brandon. And then we're going to talk some green and gold, and that's where we're going to lead things off here with the podcast. Continuing our kind of consulting work with the Pack. Today, I want to hit up inside linebackers because I also feel like this is an interesting position that the Packers got to make some decisions about this offseason here. So when I look at it, and one of them is Devondre Campbell. So I want to start off with Campbell here. When you look at his contract, when you look at Devondre Campbell's contract, 2024, he's going to have a cap hit of $14 million. Okay? $14 million. If the Packers were to release him, they would have a dead cap hit of about $11.6 million. So, basic math, you're probably saving, you're not saving a ton of money. You're saving, under $3 million. Okay? The better out would be is 2025, where they have a cap hit of $12.5 million. And if they were to move on from him, it's a dead cap hit of about $8 million. So you're up to $4.5 million. 2026, he's still under contract, where you've got a $12.5 million hit. Dead cap then is only $4 million. I wonder, though, even though you're only saving a few $1,000,000 here, I do wonder if Devondre Campbell is going to be back in Green Bay this upcoming year. Played in 11 games this year. Dealt with some injuries, ankle injuries and such. Last year, 2022, played in 13 games. His first year in Green Bay when he won All-Pro. Played in every single game. Started every single game. And hasn't really, I think it's fair to say, hasn't played to that level, hasn't played to that All-Pro level like he did in 2021. Injuries factored into it, no doubt about it. But is it worth bringing him back? And that's the question they have to answer. Is it worth it just to keep him for another year? Even though if we move on from him, it's only saving just under $3 million per year. And where does a guy like Isaiah McDuffie? Where's he at in this equation? Because it was evident. It was evident at the end of the regular season, into the postseason too. They were giving McDuffie snaps over Campbell. And whenever McDuffie was in for Campbell, when Campbell's missing time, I thought McDuffie played well. I thought he played well. Now, he went through some injuries as well. It's almost reminding me of, if we go back to like 2010, 2009, 2010, 2011, that time frame, it was almost reminding me of seeing McDuffie kind of coming in, a special teams guy, and then when he'd get some snaps in on the defense in these games, he's making some plays and such. It reminded me of Desmond Bishop. Remember Desmond Bishop? Not comparing the two players. I'm just kind of comparing the path to their careers, if you will. Desmond was the backup to Nick Barnett and A.J. Hawk. Played some time in special teams, but whenever he got on the field defensively, it just seemed like Desmond Bishop was making some plays here or there. Nick Barnett gets hurt in the Super Bowl year. Desmond Bishop plays well. And then, unfortunately, the following year, Desmond, that severe hamstring injury, when he finally gets a shot, finally gets a starting shot, and the hamstring injury there. But that's kind of like the where it reminded me of a little bit. Not saying it's going to work out the same exact way. But McDuffie was a guy that, from when I was watching, from what I had seen, a guy that was quicker to hit the hole in a running game. Sticking his nose in there. A little bit quicker sideline to sideline. And I just wonder, does that fit better with Quay Walker also being the other inside linebacker? Quay Walker is a guy that I think, with his speed, you can utilize him in different ways, blitz packages, coverage, that sort of thing. And you just kind of wonder, is the better duo that fits the... And a lot of this is going to depend on who the defensive coordinator is going to be. Right? A lot of this is going to depend on who they bring in and what their scheme or what their goals are, what they envision this defense, how they envision it, how they want to play. It's going to depend a lot on that. But part of me just wonders, is this group better when McDuffie and Quay Walker are out there? I personally believe McDuffie is a better run defender than Devondre Campbell, just from an eye test, because I feel like he's more aggressive hitting the hole. He's more aggressive getting through, the tackles or other defenders, weaving his way through traffic and getting after the run defender. So if Green Bay decides to move on from Campbell and maybe give McDuffie a shot, honestly, I wouldn't be that upset about it. But if they do that, I do think they have to potentially look at the draft and just add a little bit more depth over there, because if you do move on from McDuffie, and the thing is, McDuffie's entering his final year of his deal. So if they give him a shot and he goes out there and balls out, you're going to have to probably give him a new contract. So if you move on from Campbell and you give McDuffie, his shot, you still need some more depth at that inside linebacker. And I know there's probably a lot of Packer fans saying, for how many years have we talked about drafting an inside linebacker for this team? And it was like, Blake Martinez mid-round, Jake Ryan mid-rounds. You got to go through lists. And finally, Quay Walker was a first-round pick. Now here we are again, potentially. But I don't know if it has to be a first-round one. I mean, maybe if there's somebody there. I mean, if we're looking at some of the options at, inside linebacker for the upcoming draft. I mean, you got the kid from Notre Dame, Liufahu. Is that how you pronounce his name? You got Cooper, Texas A&M. You got Cedric Gray. I mean, there's guys out there that maybe aren't, right now at least here at the end of January, that is like, wow, showstoppers, big names. There's not going to be like a Roquan Smith or anything like that. But I do think Green Bay has to look at the draft and find some more inside linebacker help. And this was a year, too, where they got banged up quite a bit at that inside linebacker spot. I mean, how many times were we out there? And no, this is not a knock on Eric Wilson, but, he was out there getting some snaps because he had to be thrown out there. There was other dudes that had to go out there because, McDuffie, whether it was a stinger or a concussion or Campbell missing some time. Guys, the depth was tested here a little bit for Green Bay. It was tested. So I do think they have to go into the draft and address that depth. Take a look at it. And maybe that's something they can do to third, fourth round, somewhere over there. I was looking at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. His first mock draft. Daniel Jeremiah is probably if I had to rank him, probably my number one, my favorite draft analyst that's out there right now. And like a lot of mock drafts, they've got, first round, and this is going to change. Like if you're reading mock drafts right now and you're getting upset about it or that, it's January. A lot is going to change, okay? A lot is going to change at this point in time. But I was looking at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft the other day, and there is not a single inside linebacker he has in the first round. And that could change. Again, that could change. But right now, he doesn't have an inside linebacker going in the first round. So there isn't, at least now, that like top tier bona fide like stud guy over there. I think Quay Walker, when I look at his year two, I do think there was some growth from Quay Walker. And, if you look at his numbers, if you decide like, okay, like, Did Quay Walker actually play a little better? How did he make a jump from rookie year to his sophomore year? You're looking at the numbers, and there's probably not a whole lot that really jumps out to you as a difference. His first year, rookie year, played all 17 games, started 16 of them. Finished the year, 121 tackles, 1.5 sacks. This year he played in 14 games. He missed a couple games. 118 tackles, though. So he played in 3 fewer games, and only just had 3 fewer tackles. 2.5 sacks, it's one more, and then he had an interception. Quay Walker, to me, is a guy like whoever this new defensive coordinator is going to be coming in. I mentioned it the other day that whoever this person's going to be, I really want them to get the most out of Rashawn Gary because I still think there's some untapped potential there. And just to make Rashawn Gary more consistent. But I also want this defensive coordinator to come in and kind of almost unleash Quay Walker here a little bit too, because I firmly believe Quay Walker could be one of the best inside linebackers in the game. His size, he's a 6'4", 240-some pound inside linebacker, good speed for the position. You look at some of these other top inside linebackers out there, like Fred Warner, okay, for the 49ers. Kind of similar, 6'3", 230, a little bit smaller, but similar, right? He's a little bit taller of an inside linebacker. Roquan Smith, he's kind of the smaller one, 6'1", but he's 230. Quay Walker, I think, has some unique intangibles that whoever comes in to run this defense, I really want them to make him kind of a focal part of this defense and utilize him in different situations, whether it's on a blitz, whether it's, maybe coverage here a little bit, but really trying to get the most out of him. I still think there's some untapped potential for a few players on this defense. And that's kind of why I want a defense. Me personally, I want a defensive coordinator that's maybe a little bit more aggressive, because I do feel like there's guys here that we haven't seen really hit their peak yet. I know we're not talking about this position, but I'll say like defensive linemen like Devontae Wyatt and such. I feel like there's more there. Rashawn's one, Quay Walker's one here too. And he's still young. He just finished up his second year. And I'm not trying to, make him out to right now be the best inside linebacker in all of football, but I think he has that potential to be one of the best inside linebackers in football if he's put in the right position, if he's given that opportunity. He's got such unique skill sets and physical tangibles. So I look at this group. I think they've got a really good inside linebacker going into next year for the foreseeable future with Quay Walker at the helm. The biggest question this team is going to have to figure out is Devondre Campbell. Do you bring him back with that cap hit of a little over $14 million? If you don't, you got a dead cap of about 11.6. So you're saving a couple million. Is it worth it at that point to save just a couple $1 million? Do you give a shot to Isaiah McDuffie in his final year? If I were to wage a guess right now, if I were to make a prediction, I think they move on from Campbell. And I think they roll with Isaiah McDuffie to be that other starter next to Quay. And they look for another inside linebacker in the draft. That's my prediction. Could be completely off. That's how I see it rolling. I think you bring back Wilson for a little bit of depth there, but special teams play too. I like that guy a lot. Probably another 1-year deal. It's not going to cost you a whole lot here. But that's my prediction. And honestly, if this is what I was doing, if I was running the team, if I was Goody, or as, this exercise that we're doing, given the consulting work to Green Bay as an outside observer, this is how I would roll. You're not saving a ton of money by moving on from Campbell. But again, you look at, he set the bar so high in his first year in Green Bay, got an All-Pro, got a big contract. But I think it was evident towards the end of this year, too, that, he was getting subbed in and out for Isaiah McDuffie in certain situations. I think it's time to see what you got with McDuffie. I like McDuffie's attitude, mindset when he's going out there, hitting the holes hard. You got a linebacker like that, then you got the unique skill set of Quay Walker next to you. I think you can have some versatility within this defense to do a few different things. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're actually going to bring in Dr. Crow for a little inside the training room, talk about Deebo Samuel and his injury and others after these quick words. It's that time of year where we may be stuck indoors for a bit, so you need to make sure your pantries, fridge, and freezers are fully stocked. How do you do that while also saving some money? Easy. Just shop at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Whether it's stocking the pantry with soups or dried goods, or loading up the deep freezer with pizzas and frozen foods, Hy-Vee has the best selection to help keep you stocked during the winter months. And with their Hy-Vee perks, you'll save money at the register and the gas pump. Stock up on your favorite grocery items and save money with Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Let's begin with some football stuff here. Let's take a look at the 49ers. So Deebo Samuel, I think, is probably one of the biggest unknowns out there, and he left the game against Green Bay earlier due to a shoulder injury, and it's a shoulder injury that apparently he's been dealing with throughout this season. Now, I haven't seen anywhere where they've really said exactly what it is. I know Kyle Shanahan said a couple days ago that, he's hurting, but now he's feeling better. Is there any, a few different possibilities what he could be dealing with a shoulder injury that could have kept him out of that game on Saturday night and maybe potentially this game on Sunday?
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure. When you watch the game with the Pack, the interesting thing on that was a lot of times the speculation was at the time it was a head injury.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't look like a shoulder injury of any significance. But you can have an injury that's present and you can get it aggravated. But of course that begs the question, like you just asked, what is exactly that injury to the shoulder? So, usually, they can be things, and in a young athlete, you're not thinking rotator cuff generally, so it's probably going to be something more labral-based, which could be a shoulder instability type problem. You could have a shoulder contusion or something like that, but that usually doesn't linger as long as this. So I would say the most likely suspect would be a labral injury to the shoulder resulting in some subtle instability. Now, if he was having full dislocations or something like that, that would probably shut the season down. But I would guess something along those lines. And sometimes you're able to rehab through those and make it through the season. Sometimes you're able to rehab and avoid surgery altogether. But you're right; they have not disclosed exactly what the injury is. But I would guess it's something along those lines.
So if it's like a labral injury or anything like that, and I guess to kind of put it bluntly, could they shoot him up and kind of numb the pain and have him go out there, or is there a major risk for making it or hurting it worse?
Yeah, so that is one of the injuries we do not recommend doing that for. There are some. Generally, the indications for doing that are things that are painful but have little to no risk of progression. So things like AC separations in the shoulder. They hurt like a son of a gun, but really it's unlikely you're going to damage them further. So those you can numb up, and then you pay the price when the numbing stuff wears off. But it's not really dangerous. Hip pointers, things like that, rib injuries. Those are things that you can inject and say, all right, we're going to numb this up, but the odds of you having something bad happen is very, very low.
And I got to wonder.
In this circumstance.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So in this circumstance, you numb the shoulder and he injures it further, you could create a bigger labral tear or a bigger problem. So that's not something that we want to do because, again, you risk progression and worsening of that injury.
I was just going to say, too, I mean, the style he plays, like, they use him as running back. He's a physical runner over there, too. So I got to imagine, yep. You factor that in just because of the style that he plays, being that physical, that's got to make things more difficult to kind of plan for, too.
Absolutely, yeah. He's all over the field, and they certainly use him in a lot of ways, and just due to his versatility.
Yeah. The Lions, on the other hand, their center Frank Ragnow. This just screams of an offensive line injury report. I don't know if you saw this. He's listed as an ankle, a toe, a knee, and a back. All four things right there. That just screams like old school offensive line, right? So he suffered a sprained.
They'll tape him up.
Yeah, he suffered a sprained knee and a sprained ankle against the Buccaneers, and I think a lot of people, at least on social media, was like, "Oh boy, he's got to be done." He played through them last week, but that's got to be a lot to go through those for a center of all positions too.
Yeah, in the trenches, it's pretty intense warfare down there. So those guys really, if you break it down and you came to any offensive lineman in the middle of the season, and I'm talking almost any level, but especially collegiate and professional, every one of those guys has some little ding along the way. They'll be like, I rolled this ankle earlier, it's sore, my shoulder, my finger, you name it. They're just large human beings that are bashing on each other, day in and day out. So, but that's a pretty extensive list that he has. So, the question is the severity, and clearly he was able to play through him before, and without any real definitive additional injury, you suspect he'll be able to continue to play. But yeah, those are, and some of those things are, for example, like a toe injury, that might be something that you could try, medicate and make a little less painful. But some of them you just got to see how they can play. And these guys are troopers, and they're going to get out there and do their best. And so I would expect him to be out there and playing.
Christian McCaffrey here quick. So last week, and I know they're not really talking about this week, but during the game, the cameras caught him, on the sidelines, and there was like a trainer that had one of those, like those, what do you call them, muscle things to kind of keep his hamstring loose.
Gun.
Yeah, to kind of keep his hamstring loose, and they were downplaying it there, but I know he'd been dealing with a calf injury for the last couple of weeks. Could it be something as simple as they were just keeping him loose, or do you think there was potentially maybe something lingering there? Because we know he's had issues with soft tissue injuries throughout his career.
Yeah, he's had multiple, and I can't even remember all of them. It's been that many. So I'm sure there's a bit of prophylaxis going on where they're saying, hey, we don't want you to tighten up at all. And so he's stretching, he's running, he's doing the Theragun, so kind of percussion therapy. Those are all different things that you can do to try to stay loose and prevent something from actually really becoming a problem. But, we've touched on this in the past. Anytime you have a significant, whether it's hamstring, calf, you name it, groin, any of those things, when they heal, they never heal 100%. Now, sometimes they get to 99.9 and people can live and do whatever they want. But there's always going to be that little lingering thing that puts you at higher risk. So now is obviously not the time they want to have CMC go down with an injury. So they're going to do everything they can in their power to prevent. Like most things, prevention is better than treatment. So I suspect that it's that, because it didn't seem like he was really hobbled up. He was running pretty hard and pretty fast. So my guess is that was a bit of prophylaxis going on, but obviously it's hard to say for sure.
And to kind of feed into that, I know I sent you this screenshot the other day, but apparently, we talked about Matt LaFleur said that they were going to try to figure out the soft tissue and hamstring injuries with Christian Watson and Eric Stokes, and then there was an article at PackersNews.com that source said the Packers plan to send both players to Badger Athletic Performance on the UW-Madison campus, where clinical assessments will be done to better understand how the force of their on-field movements are affecting their bodies. And they got Badger Athletic Performance Director. He's among a small group of specialists who received $4 million in funding from the NFL to study hamstring injuries. I had never heard about this before. Was that something you've heard about before, Austin?
Not specific to this, but after you had messaged me that, I did a little bit of legwork on it. When and this is now a number of years back, I did my training at the University of Wisconsin for residency. While we were there, they had basically advanced camera analysis of athletes running and sprinting, and they were trying to assess the strain on hamstrings. So I bet you it's off of that study originally, and they've just kind of taken it a step further. And so they're trying to look at, different cadences and strides and when people injure it and things that they can do to try either modify running styles or something along those lines. Maybe things that if it's a specific point in the stride, if they can focus on that, or maybe stretch a certain muscle group to help offload things. It's obviously a complex topic for sure. But again, back to my point I just made, prevention is better than treatment. So if we can find a way to say, look, if we're able to modify this little thing, we can decrease hamstring injuries by 20, 30%. Because at the end of the day, to put it bluntly, the NFL is a product that they want, and the athletes are that product, right? So if the athlete's injured and sitting in the sidelines, that messes up the product. So if they want to do everything they can in their power, it's not really altruism with the NFL. They want their athletes out in the field participating. So, they're looking for ways to do that. And so I bet you it's off of that, because UW was doing that way back when I was in residency, and I'm guessing it's something along those lines that they're looking to do to try and prevent further hamstring injuries. But it's going to something that's not going to go away. But if they can find ways to just decrease it by percentages, all of that adds up in the end.
Yeah, and I know Packers let go of their head strength and conditioning coach on there too. So it seems like they're trying to find something different to combat these soft tissue injuries. But I feel like a lot of it, though, too, is just freak stuff that happens with these soft tissue stuff.
Yeah, and again, there's, like we talked about, you have an injury once, and it's like that athlete now has a risk factor. You can't make that go away. So, with Christian, his was a re-injury, right? So it's something that, is he going to be at high risk next year and throughout his career? Yes. Does it mean it will happen? No, but it certainly puts him at higher risk. And whenever I see strength and conditioning coaches get nailed, you always feel bad, because a lot of these guys in the off season are doing training on their own. One of my good friends is the strength and conditioning coach for the Houston Texans. He's been doing it for a long time. He was at the Denver Broncos prior to that. And so, he's luckily, he survived 3 separate head coaching changes down there. So he must be doing it right. But whenever you see guys, he and I have talked about this. He's like, look, a lot of these guys are doing their own workout programs and their own things. You see the off-season training. It's not all done with the team. There are guys that do that, but a lot of these guys are on their own. So it's like, how do you really put that on the strength and conditioning coach for them to somehow prevent every hamstring or groin injury? It's tough, but then again, someone's got to be the scapegoat. So that's the way the game works.
Exactly. Can he take the job in Green Bay? Maybe have him convince him to move back up here or something like that.
Well, he's from Cedarburg. That's where he went to high school, but he's originally from Texas, so he's a Texan. We're a big Cowboys fan, so he must be conflicted down there working for the Texans and being a Cowboys fan. But maybe you might be able to get him.
just saying, maybe you could put in a good word or something like that.
That's right. We'll see.
Hey, Austin, before I let you go here, I know there's locally wise there was a big news with HSHS, and I know Chippewa Valley Orthopedic Sports Medicine. You posted out a statement, or you guys posted a statement on Facebook too. But is there anything that you kind of want to throw out there too for anybody maybe looking for care or looking for maybe some help or something like that?
Yeah. So obviously it's devastating news to see HSHS Prevea closing here in western Wisconsin. So I think you could argue that perhaps for a while there was a bit of surplus with the, when Sacred Heart and Marshfield split, Marshfield opened a separate hospital. But at this point, with the closure of Sacred Heart and St. Joe's and Chippewa, there's going to be some constraints on our medical system in the area, and so I think that's going to be something that people are going to have to work through. And I think I can tell you that we on the medical side are doing our best to try to troubleshoot this problem and come up with solutions. With regards to orthopedic care, we certainly have the ability to take care of patients, and that luckily will not really be interrupted to a great degree. So we do a majority of our surgeries at Oak Leaf Surgical Hospital, and we're fortunate not to have any disruption at all. Now, there are some patients that are higher medical risk that we're not able to do there, and we're working on ways to address that for our patients. But certainly, if patients of ours that are pre-existing or looking for care, we certainly are still taking everyone on and going to do everything in our power to help people out It may require some referrals outside the area for a short duration, but we're, again, are trying to troubleshoot ways to keep everyone here locally and taken care of. But, when you start getting into some other areas of medicine, I mean, there's going to be probably some constraints on our medical system that are going to have to be taken by, Mayo, by Marshfield, and, at Oak Leaf Surgical Hospital, which I'm a board member there, we're looking at ways to expand service lines to help address this problem. So it's not going to be easy, but we're doing our best. And if people have questions or concerns, certainly reaching out to your physicians and providers and clinics, and kind of touching base, is a good first step. But we're doing our best, and it's going to be a work in progress, I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all you do. And we have a texter that just texted and said, please give my best to Dr. Crow. He fixed my shoulder a few years ago. The care and treatment from his entire team over there was top of the line, and love hearing from him every Friday morning. So there you go. Thank you to that texter. Don't have a name, but thank you to the texter over there. So
there we go.
There you go. So, hey, buddy, appreciate it. Before I let you go, give me your picks. Who do you got playing in the Super Bowl?
It's hard to go against the Chiefs, but the way the Ravens are playing, got to go with the Ravens. I would say, I know it's kind of hard to say it, that I'm rooting for, I guess, a divisional rival, but I think Lions. I think they're just going to ride the hot streak. So I'm going Lions and Ravens. But the Niners, I think, have more potential, but they just don't seem to be clicking all cylinders right now. So Lions and Ravens.
All right, Lions and Ravens. We got you on the marker board. We're going to put you up there. So that's your pick. So, dude, we appreciate it, man, as always, and thank you for everything. And you have a good rest of your week, and we'll catch up again soon, okay?
Absolutely, you too.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll have Brandon Berg on. We're going to chat some Brewers. Winter is here in the Chippewa Valley, which means it's even more important to make sure you have a good vehicle to hit the winter roads of Wisconsin. Need that vehicle for this winter season? Look no further than Toyson Ford in Chippewa Falls. Whether it's a car, truck, or SUV from their new or used inventory, Toyson Ford has the vehicle you're looking for. Making sure you have a good, proper working vehicle is incredibly important this winter season, and Toyson Ford knows that. Just give them a visit today at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard and visit ToysonFord.com. Let's start off with, I know it's been a couple days, but I've been saying, we talked about it, but I'm like, I can't wait to talk to Brandon about this to get his thoughts. He's our Brewers guy on this, our Brewers dude. Rhys Hoskins, do you like the move? What are your thoughts on the move? It's a 2-year deal. I know Jeff Passan said there's an opt-out after the first year, but your overall, and do you think he's going to play more DH than first base because of his defensive play, too, which Matt Arnold said last year, hey, we're not going to sacrifice defense for offense? Or did his mindset, you think, change after how the offense performed down there? I guess overall, your thoughts on Rhys Hoskins.
I really like the move. I think when you were looking at the realistic options the Brewers had to upgrade first base, and make no mistake about it, that's a spot that's needed an upgrade for a while, it was realistically about as good of an option as you could make. They weren't going to trade for Pete Alonso. I know, even though that was rumored at the trade deadline, that wasn't going to happen. So to grab someone like Rhys Hoskins, who is, I would say, consistently solid, not great, but solid. You look at his numbers over the course of his career, and they're pretty steady. I think that brings something to the table that the Brewers really don't have, as far as a right-handed power hitter that you can immediately slot somewhere in the heart of that lineup. I mean, the way things are looking right now, he's either hitting third or fourth, and that's much needed for this team. You mentioned the defense. Yeah, the defense isn't great. I mean, he's even coming off an injury, and he's 30, 31. I forget the age, and the defense wasn't super great to begin with. But I think it is something where I don't think the Brewers are going to commit to one person full time at DH, so you're going to see that kind of rotate. But still, you're going to see Rhys Hoskins make a decent amount of starts at first base, but also still a designated hitter as well, because he's the kind of guy that I think what he brings to the table, I mentioned, is something they need, but also in that he's a right-handed hitter, and I think that's something they need a little bit more of in the lineup. He destroys left-handed pitching, which is something we always talk about with the Brewers.
Yeah.
As far as they need more people like that, so immediately him and William Contreras in the middle of that lineup is really good when it comes to helping with their shortcomings against lefties.
Mm-hmm.
And at the price, I thought it was very fair. So overall, I really like the move.
The one thing that does, and I guess it's a question for a later date, is it just essentially going to be 1 year with Rhys Hoskins? Like there's part of me that just kind of wonders, like he goes and he has a good year, opts out, goes somewhere else for a bigger deal, maybe a longer term deal at that point. But again, that's something you worry about when that time comes. It
like
reminded me of Yasmani Grandal.
Exactly, and the longer this offseason went, where there were still so many bigger name players out there, the more I thought that the Brewers might do something like this, because you mentioned with Yasmani Grandal, it's something they've done in the past. Mm-hmm. You look at that 2019 offseason after the 2018 season, it was similar in that there was a lot of inactivity. And just around baseball, not specifically the Brewers, and then suddenly, I think it was like February, where suddenly it's like, oh, they signed Yasmani Grandal. Well, that's interesting. And they brought back Mike Moustakas, who I don't think a lot of fans thought they were going to, on a 1-year deal. Mm-hmm. So it was a nice thing to see. I would still like to see them try to find a way to grab one more bat. I think if you can grab one more solid bat, be it whoever it is, if it's a third baseman, if it's another some infielder somewhere, if it's another first baseman, if you plan on kind of mixing and matching at first a little bit between those two. Or is Owen Miller a potential over there? There's as is often the case with the Brewers, there's a lot of options out there as far as on the team. There's not a lot 100% settled. But I think they're one bat away from it being an offense that you can kind of squint at the lineup and say, okay, I think I can see it, a little bit. At least, one that's going to be good. Right. Then Christian Arroyo also agrees. Speaking of Owen Miller, he kind of reminds me a little Owen Miller, like where he plays all over, second, third, short. Now, I know it's a minor league with an invitation to there, but he's got a lot of experience. And you look at the OPS plus, it's higher than like an Andrew Monasterio at certain spots over there. So, is this the typical kind of Brewer signing where it's a guy that, may not be a starter, but will give you spot starts to give relief to other guys? Yeah, he's someone that, especially I think it was like 2018 through 2022, his numbers with the Red Sox were pretty good, especially for utility infielders. Struggled last year, which is why he was available, but someone that can play around the infield, a right-handed bat, just pretty steady. And he's someone that's going to go into camp with a chance to win a job as a utility infielder. Mm-hmm. And he could be a guy that 2 months from now we're talking about as hey, he made the team because he came into camp and just hit the crap out of the ball, or he's a guy that you could by April you could forget that he was in training camp with the Brewers, because that's how that's always the way it is when you get to spring training. Is you got certain guys that kind of have that big that big spring that lands them a spot on the team, and then there's guys that you forget that he was playing every other day in March for the team. Right. So you kind of mentioned it already. Do you think if there is one position, one area that you would like to see them maybe address, is to bring in another bat, and is that another bat at third base? I think so. I think the wild card in this mix, though, is Tyler Black, who can play third, can play first. There's still kind of questions about ultimately where he lands as far as defensively, because he's not necessarily like the prototypical third baseman. Mm-hmm. When you think of third baseman, you think of big dudes that you can play defense, they've got power, they've got a strong arm, but that's not Tyler Black. But Tyler Black has been very successful in the minors as a contact hitter that has a good eye at the plate and steals bases. He doesn't hit a ton of home runs, but he has a really good grasp of the strike zone. When he played, he played a significant amount of AAA last year, and he walked more than he struck out, which says a lot for still a younger guy having that sort of plate discipline at AAA. Mm-hmm. He's a left-handed bat. Stole a bunch of bases between AAA and AA. So he's someone that is going to, I think, come to camp with a chance to win a role on this team somewhere. Now, if you bring in another third baseman, maybe Tyler Black is a guy you're playing a lot of first base then. Or maybe, as the Brewers like to do, maybe he's a guy that kind of plays all over a little bit. But he's another guy that if he's not on the radar yet, maybe he should be pretty quick as far as fans go, just because you haven't seen him play yet at the majors. But also, I think something that's going to be interesting, and we can certainly talk about this next month once pitchers and catchers report, is I'm curious just in general to see with Pat Murphy if he does anything differently than Craig Counsell did, as far as just lineup construction, how he plays people in certain spots. We had a pretty good cross section of Craig Counsell to know kind of what he liked to do with players in certain spots.
Mm-hmm.
Does Pat Murphy do anything different? That's something I'm interested to see.
Mm-hmm.
If he kind of puts his own stamp on things, if he what he does as far as utilizing pitchers out of the bullpen, as far as like, are people hammered down in specific spots, or does he kind of mix and match a little more?
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. Speaking of Tyler Black, I know, is it MLB.com that's coming out with their top 10, prospects, position prospects. Jackson was number 1 at outfield, Jackson Cheerio. Tyler Black, I think, was number 5.
Yeah, he was. I know he was, closer to the top as far as third basemen go. But, I think they even said there, he's not the prototypical third base prospect. I think mostly because of the lack of the power and the lack of the arm.
Right.
But still, he has skills that you can be really, that you can be productive with.
Is it when you say play, could he play second base if need be? Has he gotten time over there?
I think he's played there, but it doesn't sound like that's a great spot for him.
Okay.
Plus, I think the Brewers have a little bit more in the way of depth there with some of the utility guys we mentioned. I still think they want to see what Bryce Terang, if he can make the adjustments offensively, because I don't think anyone questions what he can do defensively at second base.
Right.
Andrew Monasterio is someone I think that those two could maybe make for a halfway decent platoon, depending on how Terang hits against right-handed pitching, because Andrew Monasterio hit well against lefties last year. So in theory, you think that might make for a bit of a kind of a natural platoon there. Mm-hmm. But Monasterio can also play third base, so we'll see. But I think that third and first or DH, those are kind of the 3 spots he might float in, around to. I mean, he even played a little bit of outfield in the minors, but that's probably not going to be a big need for him given the team's outfield depth.
Right. So I'm just generalizing here. Let's say the opening day lineup, which we know in baseball, don't pay too much. That's not it. It always fluctuates. But let's say the general starting lineup, if you will, general lineup is Yelich in left, Jackson in center, Sal in right, Reese at first, Terang second, Willie at short, Tyler Black at third, Contreras at catcher. Do you like that lineup?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's still. I feel like there's just one.
And I did not say a DH because I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, one of those outfielders, be Garrett Mitchell or Joey Weimer, could be in the outfield, and Yelich could be DH. I mean,
right,
like you said, it's gonna fluctuate day to day. So there's not, but I still think it's one bat short.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if Tyler Black comes out and hits the ball like he has in the minors, then obviously that could change within a couple weeks to a month.
Right.
But this is a team that right now, you're in a division where there's no favorite. This is,
Is that surprising that the Cubs haven't been as active that I think a lot of people thought?
A little bit. I mean, because that was kind of the feeling when they got Craig Counsell was like, they're bringing him in, but they're spending money on him because they're also going to spend money on the roster, and they really haven't.
Right.
They haven't done anything. Like they've and the lay of the land with the division. I mean, the Reds obviously were an exciting young team last year. They made some moves to try to address their pitching. The Cardinals did the same thing. They're banking on a bunch of starters that are in or around their mid-30s to kind of
mm-hmm.
augments that core that they've got of Goldschmidt and Arenado that's a little bit older, but still Brewers fans are very well aware of what those two guys can do. But
right.
And you've got the Pirates, who are kind of a younger team. They got off that really hot start last year. So I think right now it's up in the air. Like
mm-hmm.
it just, you don't know, and a lot's going to change because there's still people out there and things that happen. But it's just going to be very interesting, and there's a lot of teams I think you could make a case for. And I mean that's going to maybe make it exciting, but also I think for Brewers fans, like in some ways it's a different situation to walk into the year in, where the last few years, they've kind of walked in feeling, even if not everybody felt that way, they probably walked in feeling like, hey, we're the favorite here.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just don't think there is a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, I don't know. I kind of like it in that it is less. I don't say there's less expectations, but there's just that less belief of like, well, you have to win. Like even though you're, as of right now, you're bringing back Corbin Burns and Willie Adames. That's I don't think it's necessarily like super high pressure, like say like the Brewers in 2011 were.
Right. Like
where
you knew this was
it's
a
like,
final.
oh my gosh, it has to be this.
Right.
I don't have that feeling with the Brewers where, yeah, if ultimately they don't have what they deem a successful year, Corbin Burns and Willie Adames move on. Yeah, that's disappointing. And those are two big players to lose. But I don't feel like you think the cupboard is bare.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with a farm system that I think Baseball America has is like the second best in the league, like. If you feel like this team isn't necessarily, trending to like a big downturn,
which I think maybe a lot of people thought after the Council news, like they're
right.
like, "Oh crap, here we go," it's
right?
going to go
Because
down.
I think, maybe you thought that was going to be kind of
the first domino to fall or
right,
something like that,
right? But this team wants to be competitive,
mm-hmm.
and while Rhys Hoskins, I'm not going to say he's the best hitter in the world because he's not. I mean, but to me, it changes so much with that lineup because they've desperately needed a guy that can hit third or fourth, like a legitimate person. Like last year, Carlos Santana hitting third.
Mark Canha was in there.
And Mark Canha played really well, but still, like
mm-hmm.
they aren't those guys. Like Rhys Hoskins hit in the middle of that lineup with the Phillies when the Phillies were in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that's with Bryce Harper, those
exactly.
guys in there. Yeah.
And I also think he's going to be a good person to have just as a leader on a relatively young team. I mean, he was an unquestioned.
He seems like a really good clubhouse.
Right. He
personality.
was just an unquestioned leader for that team.
Mm-hmm.
And
it sounds like Phillies fans are really upset that he's
they
out.
Were, and I think sometimes you can kind of tell what people,
That's Philadelphia fans saying
exactly,
that.
Yeah. So I think he's going to fit in really well. Mm-hmm. I guess now the question for Rhys Hoskins is he going to be able to wear number 17? Because that number's kind of been unofficially retired for Jim Gantner. Just think about it. There really hasn't been anyone that's worn number 17 in recent history. So, that'll be something interesting to...
Well, and remember, too, I think his wife will fit in because was it a couple years ago she bought like a bunch of beer for fans?
Yeah, she was buying beer for fans of the World Series.
Yeah, so I think there's a good promotion there, Brewers fans, or Brewers, to figure that one out. So, I don't know if this is a few days old or maybe even a couple weeks old. I was watching Corbin Burns. He was doing an interview. It might have been with a podcast or something like that. And I can't remember, but they were talking about Pat Murphy. And Corbin was talking about, how Pat is like all jacked up, like nobody's giving us a shot, like how Pat loves it. And they were talking about, Corbin was kind of having some fun. He's like, Pat thinks he knows guys that he played with. Like you drop a name, Pat's probably got a story like, oh, I know him or I knew him. Like, I coached him in the 50s or something like that. It seems like, and we've seen glimpses of this, but this seems like we're going to get maybe a little bit more of a animated manager with Pat Murphy.
I think so. I think that's something people, and look, that's something I think some people will like because, Craig Counsell, I think part of the reason he was successful, he was so even keel. You'd see him, get after an ump or someone at one point or another, but I do think Pat Murphy, I think, is going to be a little more. You said animated, like I think his post game press conferences are probably going to. You might learn a little bit more. Craig Counsell usually kept it pretty close to the vest.
Yep.
I think that between him and Ricky Weeks, I mean, those are two guys that are I don't think they're going to be afraid to speak their mind.
Right. And I think you can kind of tell, like just listening to Corbin, it's almost like. Not to say they didn't respect Counsell because they did. Absolutely. But it's a little different. Like,
it is. That's a very good way. It's just different. Like, I'm not, right now we can't say it's going to be better. We can't say it's going to be worse.
Right.
Even though Craig Counsell set a high bar with what he did, but it's going to be different. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's been a bit since we've had, the Brewers have had this. I mean, it's been a bit just in general. I would maybe go back to like Ned Yost as a manager that was, could be a bit fiery because obviously Craig Counsell's pretty even keel. Ron Renicky wasn't a big screamer talker. Ken Maka certainly wasn't. So, like, as someone that, is not going to be afraid to, kind of speak his mind when the situation warrants it. So,
right.
And I think, especially for all these players, they know Pat Murphy really well. I think they're above all else. They're just excited to see him get this opportunity.
Yeah, and I don't know if this would be the right way to kind of compare it. Counsell had a lot of success. Was a former player in the leagues, won some World Series. You get the respect from that. Where it just seems like guys just want to win for Pat Murphy because they really like the guy. They like his personality. They like how he goes, his mindset, and goes about his business, sort of thing.
Yep.
That's the impression I get.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then, now you're always going to have up until whoever the next manager is, you're going to kind of have that idea of like, Ricky Weeks. Is this kind of a manager in waiting kind of a thing? And we'll see. I mean,
right.
If the Brewers go out and win 65 games the next 2 or 3 years, then maybe not, because they may just want to make a clean break altogether. But that's going to be interesting.
Yep. And again, happy birthday to Uke. 90 years young today. 90 years young and still going at it.
Yep.
So let's take a quick break, and we're going to talk some more Milwaukee Bucks after these quick words. It's that time of year where we may be stuck indoors for a bit, so you need to make sure your pantries, fridge, and freezers are fully stocked. How do you do that while also saving some money? Easy. Just shop at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Whether it's stocking the pantry with soups or dried goods, or loading up the deep freezer with pizzas and frozen foods, Hy-Vee has the best selection to help keep you stocked during the winter months. And with their Hy-Vee perks, you'll save money at the register and the gas pump. Stock up on your favorite grocery items and save money with Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Still nothing officially official with Doc Rivers being the head coach for the Bucks, and the Bucks play tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they got another game tomorrow against New Orleans. But Shams from The Athletic is saying through the 2026 season, he's getting $40 million. My question for this, Brandon, is it the end of like the 25-26 season, or is it the 26-27 season? Because if it's like the 25-26 season and he's getting $40 million, holy crap. I mean, it's still a lot if you even add another year on there. That's a boatload of money, considering, too, that they're paying off Budenholzer yet. They got to pay off Adrian Griffin. Hey, I guess for Brewers fans, that if you want your ownership to spend money, at least the Bucks are.
Right.
At this point in time.
Although, you probably prefer it was not on 3 different head coaches at the same time, but you know what?
Your thoughts when you first heard Adrian Griffin was let go?
I was surprised, but I don't know if I was surprised. Like,
were you surprised like they actually did it?
Yes, I think I was more surprised they actually did it than above all else, because I know they were 30-13 or whatever, but if you've watched a fair amount of Bucks game, you can tell it just wasn't working.
Right.
Like, they're not going to, they understood it wasn't sustainable to win every game 140 to 134.
Yeah.
Like, you have to play some semblance of defense. Like, even in the NBA, you have to play defense at some level. So, and I give them credit, because it could have been easy to say, well, we just hired this guy. We can't get rid of him right away. Like, if it's not working, it's not working. Like, the worst thing you can do when you make a mistake is you keep making the mistake.
Yeah.
Like, the old saying, what do you do when what's the first thing you do when you're in a hole? You stop digging. Like, if it's not working, it's not working. And when you hear, that, he might have lost the support or the belief from some of the star players on the team, like that's a bridge you really can't come back from.
Right.
So you just have to kind of rip the Band-Aid off now, and try to get things figured out. Because ultimately, what matters is April, May, and June. You can you hit some bumps now, and you do this now, and you get some chance to kind of blend. And I'm not going to say I'm super stoked about it being Doc Rivers, but kind of going back to something you had mentioned earlier this week, like, I don't know what other options there were. Like, there's not very many kind of veteran coaches out there that can kind of jump in.
You're not going to be able to redo it and get Nick Nurse.
Right, exactly. There's just not a ton of options. Like, you could have went with Joe Prunty, but was
that going to be a guy that
was
you
that going to be the guy that gets to the top?
Yeah.
You probably doubt it. So you make the big play, and everyone's probably familiar that Doc Rivers has had some, his teams have had some disappointing finishes in the postseason. That's for sure. I mean, most recently last year, the Sixers.
Yep. But
you trust that, you believe it can be different because of the players you have. I mean, he's coached, some stars at different spots.
And I personally feel like that was a big selling point too, is that he has experience with at every stop besides maybe Orlando.
He's had some. His teams have fallen flat at times in the postseason, but you have to trust yourself and your team to say, hey, but now you have Giannis and Dame Lillard and Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez. Like, it's maybe a little bit different than having to deal with a James Harden.
Right. Yep.
So you kind of have to trust that, and you're going to give him enough time to kind of get the lay of the land and hopefully be feeling a lot better about yourself come April than you are, right now.
Right. Yeah. I know there was reports and there was some talk, and even John Horst kind of mentioned it here too. You got the sense listening to John Horst's presser before their previous game against Cleveland that I got the sense that he's like, yeah, we might have regretted making that hire after everything kind of happened after that, because at that time, when they hired, and he acknowledged we didn't know about Brooke, we didn't know about Chris, Giannis didn't have the extension, they didn't have Dame.
They thought there might have been maybe a little bit of a chance, kind of a growth period.
Right.
Whereas, the way everything developed, it's win now. It's not, we think he can be a good coach in 2 years. It's like, well, we kind of need him to be a good coach now.
Right. Yep. So after all that transpired, and then, I'm sure there's going to be some people that said, well, why didn't you make the decision after you got the Dame trade if you weren't that confident? I mean, you're probably like, okay, let's see how it rolls.
Well, the Dame trade happened a week before the season.
Yeah.
You're not going to hire a coach a week before the season.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly. So, they went through it, and I don't think I was like you. I was surprised they actually did it because I think there was enough evidence, whether it was players like Giannis or Bobby Portis, say, hey, we got to do this, we got to do this, and kind of voicing some of their frustrations or whatever. Yeah, they were still winning. But I think anybody who was watching Bucks games or following along could tell it's like, but are you confident they can win? Yeah, they're second place in the East, but do you think they can win? I mean, we're sitting here talking about, let's hope they don't face Indiana if they're a 7th seed. Yeah, and
right.
It's like that's not very confident to be thinking about that. It's like because they can't stop them on the offensive side. And I know I don't think I've seen many people, if maybe I could count them on one hand, excited about Doc Rivers. But I'll say, who else was out there?
Right. I just don't know what there were for options.
Mm-hmm.
That's given the realistic options out there. I think it was probably about as good as you could do, relatively speaking.
And I think I know Giannis downplayed the role he had in bringing Adrian Griffin in, and I know he said, yeah, they asked me, for my opinions and all that, and et cetera. He's like, but I don't make the decisions and all that. I would counter that by saying, but you know what, Giannis? Your opinion weighs more than maybe a guy like Pat Connaughton. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not trying to pick on Pat. But if I'm a general manager of an NBA team, and I know it's a superstar league, where you got to make your superstars happy, otherwise their superstars are going to go out. And this is a superstar that was already making comments like, Milwaukee's got to show me that they're committed to always winning championships. So you're out there in public saying that. And so when the front office and the ownership group says, hey, here's our finalists, which one do you like? Just give us your opinion. And you say, I like Griffin the best. That is going to weigh heavily on a front office's decision. So you could say, yeah, you're not involved and you don't want to be involved in those decisions. Yet you kind of indirectly are, though, because one, you went out there and said, I got to see the team be, committed if I'm going to commit. And then you are the best player. You are a superstar. They were trying to make you happy. So, yes, you are indirectly involved in these decisions. So, may not have been like, I want that guy. That's my pick. It could have been like, yeah, I really liked him. I really enjoyed, and he was probably my favorite counter. Well, then that probably was the sign, seal, deliver. We're going to go with Adrian Griffin at that point. So, do you think they regret not hiring Nick Nurse, though?
Probably, but from what I had seen reported, maybe Giannis wasn't necessarily the big Nick Nurse fan.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if that's the case, well, then you're going to kind of...
You have to live with it then if you're Giannis, right?
Yes, you do.
I mean,
yeah, you do. If that's the case, and that's what I had seen reported, but I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
But whether that's true or not, you're for good or bad. Like when you're a superstar, you give your opinion on things. Like you have to understand, they're going to listen to you.
Yep. Exactly. If you don't want to be involved in that, you can just flat out say, hey, I trust you guys to make the decision. I want the best coach out there. Give me the best coach that you guys think is out there. So, I don't know. I know somebody was asking, why is he, they haven't announced Doc yet or anything like that. Maybe it's something on the road trip that he joins them because they're after these 2 home games.
Yeah, they play back to back.
Yeah, so maybe it's something like, hey, you want to bond with a new coach and a coaching staff? No better way than doing it in hotels and going on a West Coast road trip over there. But I don't think there's a hang up or anything.
No, and I'm sure part of it too was just it takes a lot. I mean, Doc Rivers went from he's doing TV to hey, you're going to be this coach in Milwaukee now. There's still certain things you have to get taken care of.
And he's probably trying to find coaches to join him too.
Right. And that, or if I don't know if he's going to be
kind of easing on in.
If they're going to keep some of the staff, like how that works. Like there's just a lot of logistics that have to be taken care of, and they can't be done in a day.
Especially during the season.
Right.
So, quick break, and we're going to make some picks after these messages. Winter is here in the Chippewa Valley, which means it's even more important to make sure you have a good vehicle to hit the winter roads of Wisconsin. Need that vehicle for this winter season? Look no further than Toyson Ford in Chippewa Falls. Whether it's a car, truck, or SUV from their new or used inventory, Toyson Ford has the vehicle you're looking for. Making sure you have a good, proper working vehicle is incredibly important this winter season, and Toyson Ford knows that. Just give them a visit today at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard and visit ToysonFord.com. You going Ravens or Chiefs, and why?
I am going to go with the Ravens because I think they are the better team. However, it would be a very Chiefs thing to have the Chiefs have the regular season they did, where everyone just kind of wrote them off and said, "Oh, they're done," and then they would make the Super Bowl anyway. Because Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. He's the best player in the NFL. Like he's the best quarterback in the NFL. But I'm going to go with this year's MVP, Lamar Jackson. I think the difference is going to be that defense, especially in the middle of it, the linebacker core, like being able to kind of keep Travis Kelce from running wild.
Yep.
Because Travis Kelce's another one. He didn't have a great year, but last week he showed he's still darn good. Like he's not done. But in the end, I'm going to take Baltimore.
I am going to take the Ravens as well. That defense is awesome. Lamar Jackson's probably going to be MVP, odds are. The player on this defense, you mentioned the linebacking core for the Ravens and such, and I mean blitzing and all that. The player that I think is going to have the biggest impact for the Ravens defense is going to be Kyle Hamilton. That guy's a stud.
Chess piece.
Yes.
You can play him all over the place.
Yep. He might have a big role in stopping or slowing down Travis Kelce in this game. Isaiah Pacheco, trying to slow him down in the running game. One of Hudson's now favorite players is Isaiah Pacheco for some reason. I had to go buy him an Isaiah Pacheco card. I think he just likes saying the name.
Pacheco. It's a fun running back name.
Yeah. But I think with Hamilton back there, he is that's the safety I want for Green Bay. Is that type of safety. Is that dude. I
mean, he's big. He's the whole package. He can do everything. He's big. He's tall. He's rangy.
Yep.
Like he can hold up about as well as you can expect any safety to hold up if he's got to be pressed with keeping a close eye on Travis Kelce.
Yep, I agree. So I'm going Ravens as well in this thing, and just please let it be the Ravens from just a personal standpoint too. Just please, come on. I just want the Ravens to go. So
although I will say on that note, part of me is hoping Chiefs just because I want to kind of watch the world burn.
I was going to say you like chaos, right?
I like chaos. Yeah. At this point, like to me, the thing that's almost as fun is like seeing whatever buzz there would be leading up to the Super Bowl is just. I feel like in some ways the whole Taylor Swift stuff has kind of jumped the shark. Now I'm just kind of enjoying watching people getting really mad about it.
Well, I mean, if you want Chiefs and Lions, I mean, who's Usher doesn't even have to do the halftime. Just have Eminem and Taylor do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
And besides, don't we want to see 2 weeks of shirtless Jason Kelce?
No, I don't. All right, so we're both Ravens. How about the NFC? Niners, Lions. America's team, Lions.
By the way, first of all, if Green Bay would have found a way to win last weekend, I would have given you a lot of crap today because I believed in them when you didn't.
God, you were just waiting all week.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
But
okay, let me ask you then. If Green Bay would have won, would you pick them this week?
Yes.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have allowed you to pick them this week.
So I wouldn't pick them, but I would. I'd want to, but I wouldn't. So.
But going back to this game, I'm going to take San Francisco. I think at some point Detroit's defense is going to let them down. They can rush the passer. Aiden Hutchinson is a great young star in this league. I still have questions about their secondary, about that back half of the defense. And even though the 49ers will not likely have Deebo Samuel, I think at some point, I mean, it was a grind to beat the Rams. The Buccaneers, who have been very hit or miss, were within striking distance. At some point, I just think this defense reverts to what we saw at times when the Packers beat them on Thanksgiving or when they allowed Nick Mullins to throw for 400 yards on them twice. Like, at some point, I think it gets away. I think the defense is the reason that Detroit loses at some point. I think this is that game.
Garrett, if you're listening, I'm sorry, man, but I'm going 49ers too, which means it's the kiss of death.
Yep.
So
we both picked it. So
yep.
Chiefs and Lions.
Yeah. 40. The way that I know people are kind of down on the 49ers because of how they played against the Packers, that might have actually been a good thing for them, I think, in this one. Barely squeaking by with that thing. It's not going to rain. Brock Purdy stinks in the rain. I've got the weather. It's not supposed to rain. So it's going to be nice for him over there. I think the Niners, I feel comfortable in the Niners, and I don't know if that's a good thing right now.
Right. I agree with your thought on, I'm not going to say that they overlooked the Packers last week, but I think they now have that, whenever you have a game like that and you win, it's just like, okay. You kind of feel like, okay, we got away with one there.
You maybe focus a little bit more.
Right.
And I think that's what's going to happen. I really do. And I agree with what you said with the Lions defense too, over there. Just, Debo being a loss is a big loss. But here's the other part too. Brandon Ayuk had over 1,300 yards receiving.
Right.
George Kittle had over 1,000 yards receiving. They still got a dude named Christian McCaffrey that they can get involved in the game. Yep. So I think, I'm going to go with the 49ers in this one too. And I just think that Niners defense, I think if you can put pressure on Jared Goff, consistent pressure on Jared Goff.
Get him off a spot.
Yep.
When he can sit back there and get rid of the ball quick, he's a very good quarterback. But if you can get pressure up in the middle in his face, you can make him look very bad.
I think Fred Warner is just going to wreak havoc on him. We've seen how bad Jared Goff is when he's under pressure, and I think the 49ers can do that. Lions are a little banged up too. Frank Ragnow, he's got 4 injuries on there, and he toughed it out, but now you're going up against, San Fran, and they're going to try to put some pressure on it. So, I'm rolling with the 49ers in this one. So, 49ers, Ravens rematch from 10 years ago?
From the Harbaugh Bowl.
Yeah.
When the lights went out
already? 2013?
That would have been 11. Or is that the 2013 season?
Was it the 2013 season, 2014 Super Bowl?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was when Rodgers was out, and then they played the 49ers when they beat the Bears, and then the 49ers came and beat them in the cold weather. And,
gotcha.
So 13 season, I believe.
14. Yeah, so then,
Yep.
And full circle, we got Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL now.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And he's going to be in Baltimore, apparently.
For the game, yeah.
For the game, this one. Be the last time you could probably wear a Ravens hat, though. I don't even know if you should still wear a Ravens hat in this one.
He should wear the Rob Lowe NFL.
Where did I see something like that? I saw somebody. Oh, it was around here, I thought, too. I was going wow.
They had the Rob Lowe NFL Shield hat.
It was either a hat or a jacket or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But, all right, that's what we're rolling with. And to me, fitting because those were the 2 best teams all season long.
Yep. They're the 2 1 seeds. To me, that's I would say the best matchup as far as on field. Certainly if the Lions make the Super Bowl, there would be a lot of other, fun things going into it. If the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, there would be a lot of things that were talked about in the lead up there too. But to me, that is the best possible matchup. And it matches the color scheme of the logo.
Ooh, conspiracy theory.
Yeah, because it was purple and red. So it's like a purple, because that's happened in the past where teams have advanced the Super Bowl match color scheme. Mm-hmm. And I think next year's is purple and green, so Jets and Vikings.
Oh, God. Or Green Bay and Baltimore again.
I like mine better.
Oh, boy. Man. I feel more comfortable, I think, with the 49ers win than the Ravens win, almost. And I don't know if that's dangerous. I think that's kind of dangerous to have that mindset. I'm not a fan of either's team, so I don't really care. Honestly, I don't have a team that I really like. I'm hitching my wagon to.
No.
With these 4. I got a division rival. I don't care that they haven't won. It's a feel-good story. Awesome, but you know what? It's still division.
Yeah, they felt good enough.
Yeah.
It's it is the. I thought about this week. The the Chappelle Show skit with the player haters ball, where he's like, we were talking about hating. He's like, why do you have more than me? Why can't I have that? That's how I feel right now. Why do you have more than me? Why can't I have that?
Yep. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm too competitive. I don't want to have a division team. And then 49ers with all that history there.
Yep.
Chiefs I'm just sick and tired of, and Ravens won one 10 years ago, and that's fine. So
yeah.
I got too much. I just whatever happens in this one, I guess. So, okay. Again, those the first one's going to be the AFC. Second one's going to be the NFC on Sunday. I wanted to do another prediction, but I forgot what it was. I got too focused on football here. I forgot what my other prediction I was going to bring up, and I thought it was a good one.
Maybe we got Badgers and Michigan State tonight.
Oh yeah, let's do that one.
Yeah.
That's another pick there. You want me to bring up the line?
Sure.
For that game? Because Badgers beat them earlier during that 3-game stretch that we thought was the gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat Michigan State in that one. Let me get the line for this one. This one's in the Kohl Center. I did see the Badgers say it's sold out.
Yep.
Because they're doing a stripe it out thing over there. 7 o'clock tip time. The line is, I got to imagine the Badgers. Yeah, Badgers 3.5.
That's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I will take Wisconsin. I think that, we were talking a little bit about, kind of the Niners and maybe the game with the Packers. I think maybe Wisconsin coming off that win over Minnesota, a game that could have got away from them. Maybe in previous years it does. But they're at home. I think, the Kohl Center will be rocking, hopefully.
Yeah.
But and Michigan State's just very hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one if you're Wisconsin you want to get, because you still got 2 matchups with Purdue coming up. You've got the schedule gets tougher once you get into February, so you just need to keep banking conference wins.
Mm-hmm. So
I will take Wisconsin by 5.
I'm going to take Wisconsin. I like that 5. I think there's going to be like a bunch of free throws in that final minute. You know how we see the foul go to the line sort of thing. So, yeah, I like Wisconsin. That's going to do it for this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. As always, big thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, which now available on YouTube as well. So if you don't have a podcasting app, you can check it out on YouTube over there. And while you're there, on your favorite podcasting app, don't forget, if you could, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review so others can find the podcast. Until next time, I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.